Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturian Society.
Welcome,
Hello.
everybody. Did
Hello,
you
hello.
miss us? Hello, Karissa. Did you miss me?
Always.
I didn't even go anywhere. We didn't even take a break for the week. I don't know why everyone missed me. But
I
you
will
did.
say,
It's okay.
this week has felt very, very long because I'm like a little sleep deprived from the puppies. So it feels like it's been a month, but it has been just over 1 week. So
Sounds about right.
yeah.
I'm not so sure about the drink that I made for myself.
Oh, what is it?
It needs more lemon. It's an ounce of whiskey, and then it's like an ounce of this like cocktail. It's like a honey apple cider vinegar like cocktail mix thing. And then I put sparkling lemonade in last time. It was delicious. But this time I grabbed the other can that was stuff from the fridge that was cold, which was a lemon lavender water that was bubbly. And so you'd think that the honey and the lavender and the whiskey would all go well together, and it does, but the lemon is not strong enough. I need to squeeze the lemon in this.
I am like flabbergasted by the number of drinks that now have lavender in them, because it was like, I know there's been lavender tea for a while, but lavender was never something you drank. It was something you put in like perfume and smelled. And so, but I've had a couple like lavender lemonades over the past couple months, and I'm like, gosh, this is my new favorite. It is so good. Whoever thought of this, thank you.
I know. Lemon and lavender is possibly the best flavor combination of, like, if you're going to combine like a flower flavor and a fruit flavor, I think lemon and lavender might be the most complementary.
Yeah, shockingly good. If you guys haven't
Rose
tried
and orange
it
is good too, though. But yeah, seriously, go try a lemon lavender thing. Anyways, that one over there is Karissa Harlow, aka Lewis.
Hello. I just have plain coffee. Well, it has creamer in it, but because I will be up again tonight. Nice. Probably.
I will be too, but not because of puppies. I will be up because we are painting the house. So hopefully in the next month or so, we will get to this room. Right now we're doing the kitchen and the living room because we're going to have people come stay. And I'm like, please don't shame me.
They need to look nice. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so then we'll get to this room. And hopefully it will look much better than it currently does, because it just looks old and kind of gross, doesn't it?
It's very monochrome. Is that the word? Or
monochromatic?
Monotone is words. Yeah.
Monochromatic.
Yeah.
It does.
What are you Are you painting everything one color or different colors?
Allow me to tell you. So by the way, I'm Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien. Okay, here we go. So what was that sound? Oh my God. There was some weird sound, like something was popping. Anyways. Okay. So
it's just your voice.
It's just my voice popping. So the kitchen and the living room are going to be this very pale blue. The master bedroom and bathroom are going to be very pale green. And the guest rooms and guest bathroom are going to be a very pale yellow. So
nice.
I'm very excited. I think it'll make everything look really fresh and big, because the rooms are actually fairly small, but I want it to feel big. And obviously we're repainting all of this. What is that trim that's in the back? Is that all the way over there? Yes. That horrible trim. It's bad. And I thought it's wood, right? It's printed to look like wood. No, it's plastic.
Oh.
Which is so easy to paint on if you've ever tried to paint on slick plastic before. So
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it does look like wood.
Yeah, it does, but it's not. And so trying to paint over it looks like 70s wood.
Yeah.
So we got this primer to go on everything first, because they're also vinyl walls because it's a manufactured home. So we got this, it's like an adhesive primer. So it means it sticks really well. So you could paint basically anything with it. And then you can paint your normal paint on top. But so like, I still have paint all over me this is from yesterday, and I showered and scrubbed and it still won't come off, because it's like, we are made to stick to anything, even humans. So
Are you sure that's not just part of your tattoo there? That's not supposed to be there?
That would look cool though if it was. Do you guys like my tattoo if you're watching on YouTube? These are my rays. My sweet baby rays. Actually, that's a barbecue sauce, but these are...
I'm going to say it's the stingray, not sun ray.
Yeah, stingrays. My sun rays are on my shoulder. I'll just strip for the camera. I'm wearing my GCU shirt today. Yay. It's fun. My painting shirt. So I only have one GCU shirt. It's this one, and it's a painting shirt. Actually, I do have another one, but it has the wrong graduation year on it, because my friend got it who came to school like 2 years after me. And she's like, I don't want it. And I was like, it's like 3 sizes too large. I do, because that's a nightgown now.
because that's my jam. We are total opposites. I have so many. I have like a million GCU shirts, and I know them all so well that I know when one is missing. So like I realized the other day I was missing one. I was like, where is that very specific purple shirt with Grand Canyon? And it has the lobe on top and not the bottom, da da da. And it's because I hadn't done my laundry for that color. So I had to do it. Yeah, is it that one?
I think it might be. This is the one with the antelope on top and not at the bottom. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I have. Well, unless it's faded. Mine is very striking purple, but
mine is very.
Faded. I have many, and then I have a college T-shirt from where all of my cousins went. Nice. So I have lots of college paraphernalia, and none of them are painting shirts. I do sleep in a lot of them though.
The shirt I wore yesterday to paint was my mom's old college shirt. So pretty much all I have like the antithesis of school spirit, and I always have. So I'm like,
I know.
I had other shirts from the school and I threw them away. Like I don't keep
like I don't need this.
Like I keep it around as like my junk shirt.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I have so much school spirit. It's weird because I went to a small charter high school, and we had sports teams, but we weren't big on sports. Like we didn't even have a football team or anything. And then I went to GCU where the big thing was basketball, but like still no football team. Sports aren't like as, especially when we were there, they weren't as big. Yeah. But I have so much school spirit that I probably would do really well at a school with a big team.
Yeah.
I just never go there because I don't know. Because academics are more important, and sports and academics don't tend to align at the same schools. So
that's often true. I will say this though. So, Texas universities, football schools are a bit of an exception to that. But so think about, Texas spirit, and Texans are like, hooray, Texas is better than everywhere else. And it's true. And we say that. And then, so think about that pride plus university pride. And you get like the people who went to A&M and UT. My mom went to A&M.
It's like psychotic level school spirit.
It is like a psychotic level of school spirit. And my mom always goes, God, I loved that school spirit. Gosh, I just really think you would have had a good time. And I'm just thinking, no, do you know me at all? But
opposite
also,
what I want.
He was the most introverted person, like more introverted than you. She was so introverted. And
that
so
is saying something.
Like, that's what it is. It's, if you guys can't tell, you probably can't tell on the pod, actually, we're so chatty, but Carissa's considerably introverted. I am also introverted, but there's levels. And my mom in high school and college was, aside from her being on dance team and having to talk to her, dance mates, I don't know what you call them, the other people on your dance team.
Dance mates works.
Doesn't it? Yeah. So aside from that, though, she just like didn't really speak at all. She's very quiet. So, but she was like, Giga Maggies. Yeah, that's what they say. The mascot of, well, actually, I think the mascot is Reveille, a border collie or something for A&M. But like, it's like they have two, because their other one is a farmer. Aggies, agricultural. It's an agricultural science school. That's so funny to me. They're like, Aggies, yeah, gig 'em Aggies. And it's a thumbs up is their logo. It's like a farmer's hand giving a thumbs up. Gig 'em Aggies.
That's so interesting because New Mexico, which is right next to Texas, right? Yeah. That's where one of my cousins went to school, and she went to New Mexico University, NMU. I believe it wasn't University of New Mexico. I think it was New Mexico University. They're also the Aggies. They have, and they're like I think it's this. Gosh, Grace is gonna be so upset if I get it wrong. It's something. It's like a gun, but
we're throwing gang signs here for universities.
Yeah. But it's
really
a different Aggie
universities. That's funny. Yeah, and A&M is also a really big football school. So. Yeah, I don't know. So then there's also that level of pride. It's just the school spirit that goes on at A&M is just insane. So the rivalries here are just insane. Like there have been times I'm like, are people going to actually like get into a fist fight over these rivalries?
This might be why I have a lot of school spirit, because I live in Tucson, and we have U of A, University of Arizona, and their rivals are ASU, which is Arizona State University in Phoenix. And so we're these two college towns, and we're very close by, and there's a lot of, commingling, is that the right word? And it is a very extreme rivalry. So maybe I just picked up on that, even though I didn't go to those schools, because I lived in both those cities my whole life. So yeah,
you were like, I've read Shakespeare. This is the Montagues and the Capulets. I can relate to this.
Exactly. Gosh, yes, it's a sports Shakespeare deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, anyways, how are the puppies?
They are good and also really exhausting, but I love them. Um, let's see. Gosh, okay. I have this one story that I've been really wanting to tell. It happened almost a week ago. It was like the day after we recorded the last podcast. And it was just Aurora. So there are two of them, right? Aurora and Luna. And Luna's about a week younger, so we didn't have her yet. My dad and I had been trading shifts. So I would take the early shifts. I would be up with them from like 7 to 2. Then he would get up and he would be with her. And so one night it was like, I don't know, I think it was around 2 a.m. and my dad was kind of sleeping in a little bit. And I was like, it's fine, I can go all night. And I'm sitting and she's asleep, right? So we have this like section of the living room blocked off. It's like a couch, 2 love seats, and then 2 ottomans. So I can step over the ottomans to take her out if I need to, but she's kind of reined in. And she's asleep, and she's been asleep all night. She's, kind of waking up and then moving positions, but she's fine. And then suddenly, for no reason, at like 2 a.m., she jerks awake and stares at one corner of the room like there's something there.
I hate that.
And I'm like, what's wrong? Is everything okay? And she's, looking at it, and then she runs and hides behind me.
No.
And then she starts to growl. And I'm like, okay, it's probably a bug, right? It's a spider, maybe a scorpion, something like that. So I turn my flashlight on my phone on, I'm looking. I examine every inch of this corner of the room, and there is nothing. I am 100% positive that there were no bugs in the house. I'm just like, there's nothing. There's like a table with a clock on it, and that's it. So she's still freaking out, and I'm trying to comfort her. I'm like, everything's fine. Everything's fine. But I know there's nothing there. So 2 thoughts simultaneously occurred to me. I'm like, okay, one possibility is that there is a demon in the house.
Oh my God.
And it's just sitting in that corner, and she can sense it and I can't. And this is like, terrifying, but also I'm feeling okay about that because
I feel like you'd sense it.
I know. So my pastor says this, I believe this. If you are a Christian, like a real Christian, you can't be possessed because you're already possessed by the Holy Spirit.
I've heard that too. I take great comfort in that.
So I'm like, I'm safe. My parents are safe. I'm pretty sure, as much as you can be sure of someone else. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, but it could possess the dog. And that's why she's scared. And I'm like, and what do? I'm like, I guess I could run because she can't get over the ottomans yet. But what happens in that brief moment between the possession and me escaping? And I'm like, that's why she's afraid. So I'm like holding her close. I'm like, take some of my Holy Spirit, just like trying to protect her. But then more realistically, and possibly worse, the thought occurs to me that there's a window in that corner. And I'm like, is she hearing someone outside the house trying to break in? Which is totally possible. And we have a camera over there. But the thing is, 10, 15 minutes before this happened, our Wi-Fi and our internet went out. And I know this because the TV is connected to it. So Netflix went off and I was like having to watch a normal TV. And my phone wasn't working. So annoying. And my phone wasn't working.
Actually.
And so we have these cameras and they go off if there's motion outside the house. But I think they go down when the internet goes down. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, not only can I not check the webcam to see if there's, or not a webcam, the cameras outside to check that, I also can't call for help if there's someone outside.
This is terrifying.
So I'm just sitting there, she's freaking out and I'm just petting her and she's still growling at the corner. And I'm like, everything is fine. Everything is fine. And I'm like willing my dad to wake up. I'm like, please come down here. He's asleep and he's also sleep deprived. So I don't want to wake him. And everything was fine. He woke up maybe half an hour later and he came down and that she was fine and he was fine. He's like, it's probably nothing. I'm like, you don't understand what was happening. She was cowering behind me, crawling into my lap. This is not a lap dog. Aurora doesn't necessarily like to be held. She's crawling into my lap, cowering into me. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just go to bed. But
that's
before
terrifying.
So then my dad comes down. He's like, hey, can you take her outside before I come down there? And I'm like,
you're like,
you want me to go outside?
Are you crazy?
And I told him, I was like, she's been growling, kind of freaking out. He's like, it's fine. It's probably a spider. I'm like, no, it's definitely not a spider. I checked.
Oh my God.
But I took her outside anyway. And this is maybe the bravest moment of my life.
This is brave.
And especially because, so she's black. She's entirely black, except for a little beard light. So it's dark outside and she's black and she runs off. And I'm like, I'm getting my flashlight and I'm like, Aurora, where are you? And she like went to the bathroom and then we came back in and I was fine. But then all night I'm like, what if the serial killer was outside? What if they came in when I was out there with her?
No,
so
that's why I always lock the door behind me whenever I leave. I'm like so scared.
But I couldn't do it this time because she's black and I was going to lose her in the shadows of the night. So anyway, I go to bed. Nothing happens. Everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
The next day, she starts doing it again, but like around 11. Yeah. I'm like, what is your issue? And I think this is an anticlimactic ending, but I think the clock was freaking her out because I had the TV low to help her sleep. And I think she could hear the ticking because normally we have the TV on, so you can't hear the ticking. When you turn it down, I think she could hear the ticking. And
Very
then
possible.
like the lights changing on the TV were making it kind of flicker and look like it was moving.
Oh,
so I was just like, this whole night, I was like, I cannot comprehend what you were worried about. What is going on? I was so confused. I think it was just the clock. We moved the clock and she's no longer freaking out. So
all right, problem solved. See, I was thinking maybe she sensed like an owl outside or something, a natural predator to something so small, but
like something real.
Yeah, something real. But I'm glad you guys figured out that it was the clock.
Yep. So, I mean, unless there was an extraordinary coincidence, I don't think there was a demon or a serial killer.
No.
So
my
first
good thought, though, when you were talking about your dog potentially being possessed by a demon, was that I literally just saw a TikTok video about this exact thing where like there's this woman, there's like no context. I still don't know if it's fake, but it's hilarious, even if it's real, which is bad that it's so funny. But there's this dog. She's clearly like in an apartment hallway, right? She's looking out through her door of her apartment into the hallway. And there's this little dog, and it's just like a tiny little fluffy little dog. And she goes, I don't know, there's something about this dog doesn't look right. Like the eyes, look at the eyes look different. And I mean, I don't know. It's one of those dogs. I always think their eyes look weird. Like I'm weird about little dogs. I'm like, you all look weird to me. So
not human.
So this weird looking little dog is just looking at her, and she says the dog's name, and then she says, sit. And then she says, lie down. And then she says, turn around. And the dog does all of the stuff. And then she goes, yeah, you ain't my dog. My dog don't know tricks. And she shuts the door and she's like, that dog is possessed. And she's like freaking out. And I was like, oh my God, is this real? Because how hysterical if that's true. I mean, and also if it's just a joke, it's a hysterical joke. But I'm like, something about that just was like, okay, this is the first time I've ever laughed at anything potentially demon possession related, and probably the last time I ever will. But I was like,
it's not usually comedy.
No, it's not usually comedy, and it could have been very well fake. But I was like, something about this is so funny to me. Anyways,
oh my gosh,
that was my first thought.
Yeah. So the thought that came into my head, which is considerably more terrifying, is that when I was, I think in elementary school, you had the Scholastic book fairs, and there was a series of books, and it was like 3 or 4 short horror stories in the book. And I don't remember what they're called. It wasn't Goosebumps. It wasn't anything like that, but it was like, just these stories. And these stories, I think about one of them, like maybe once a week. They traumatized me as a child.
Is
and
it the one they made into a movie lately, like a couple years ago?
I don't think so. I didn't hear about it if it was, but one of the stories, maybe someone out there knows what book this is from. There's a demon possessed parrot, and this kid, he's like 10 years old, I think, and his parents buy the parrot, and they have a dog, and the dog's freaked out by the parrot, right? It's always barking. It's always growling at it. And the parrot is like slowly brainwashing all of the adults into like doing terrible things to the dog and this boy. And so the boy goes to like, I don't know, an occult store and like buys a book to try to exorcise this demon. And he's exorcising it. And like the person at the store was like, whatever you do not stop partway through, because if you don't finish the exorcism, that's really bad. And so he's doing this, and the parrot is freaking out, and one of the feathers flies into his mouth and he stumbles over a word. So then he finishes and he's like, great, everything's fine. But then the demon went into the dog, which is so much worse than a parrot. And that's how the story ends. They all ended on like cliffhangers like that. And horrible. I think about this constantly. I'm not afraid of dogs. Yeah. There's also one where these kids. I know. There's also one where these kids get built into sand castles. And what are some of the other ones? There are a few. There was one about doppelgangers coming from another universe and slowly taking the place of this kid's family. And I think about that a lot. It's so terrifying.
That is some Twilight Zone level stuff.
Yeah. So that's probably why my brain immediately jumped to like demon when she started freaking out, but nothing since. So
Huh, that's so scary. Now I know more scary things. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a nice time sleeping tonight.
Rolling around in my head. See, I actually have gotten to sleep, and yet I still have been waking up exhausted. What's that about the brain? I like wake up and I'm like, oh my God, did I sleep at all? And then my watch is like, fair. It's because it tracks my sleep now. And it's on low battery. It needs to be charged now so I can track my sleep again. But it'll say like, good, fair. I've only gotten good once. And I think that good isn't even like the highest level. I think it's like the average, like kind of mid-level. Right. It's good. I keep getting fair, but I still feel like I should be more rested because I wake up and I'm like, I don't feel fair. I feel like crap.
I feel significantly worse than fair.
I feel significantly worse than fair. So anyways, I guess. Yeah. Do you have any book recs this week?
I do. Finally. And I think you're going to like this one.
Hell yeah.
I have started to read the Witcher series and I'm super excited because I watched season 2 finally. So now I have watched season 2 and then it was like season 3 is coming out in December 2023. And I'm like, what? I didn't realize that I had waited so long to watch season 1. So I only had to wait like 6 months between season 1 and 2. And then I waited 4 months after it came out because I like to do that so that I don't have to wait as long. But like, why? December 2023 is so far away. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to buy the books and read them. So I did. And I think I looked up the reading order. So essentially there are 5 main ones. And then there's a 6th that is either a prequel or a sequel to the main series or something. It's not numbered on the spines the way the first.
Yeah, they're very
somehow
strange.
It's different.
Yeah, they're very odd.
Yeah. And then there are 2 short story collections. And if you guys have watched the Netflix show, season 1 is based on the short stories. And that's where they say you should start. So I read The Last Wish, which is the first short story collection. And it was so good. I love it. It was so exciting. I mean, it was kind of like, I think I would have enjoyed it more if I'd watched it before if I'd read it before I watched the show, because it's essentially the same. They did follow it pretty well. It was weird. There was like a
my
lens flare.
Electricity flickers all the time. No, it's my electricity. It flickers when the AC turns on.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. And it's short story collections are so hard to find good ones. And I just feel like the fact that it's a bunch of short stories from the same character's point of view in the same universe, they're just all tied together so well. And it was so good. So if you guys are interested in that, I would definitely recommend it.
Hobby has it on his shelf right back there. He's got The Last Wish back there. Yeah.
Cool.
I have not read it and I have not finished watching season 2. Book recs. Okay.
I thought you had. I'm ahead of you.
Yeah, you are. I started and I was like, this is intense. I don't want to watch it by myself. And then Javi just never brought it up again. I bet he watched it without me. He does that sometimes. Sometimes I think that we're watching a show together and then he'll be like, no, I finished it weeks ago. And I'm like, bro.
What the heck?
And now I don't want to rewatch it by myself. So I'm like, whatever, man. I need to check and see if he did that with season 2. But anyways, book recs. Okay, here's an excellent one. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith.
You changed your tune.
I changed my tune. I was dreading it last week because I was like, this book is going to be, it is really long. I was like, it's really long. It's a classic. We picked it for Arbor Day to be funny. Like, actually, it was amazing. It was really long, but like, it was so good that like, I kept wanting to like start skimming through, you know, just to get finished with it. And then I was like, I can't, I might miss something. And it's so good.
I have to give my full attention.
It was amazing. It did. It needed my full attention. So it was fantastic. And it was also like, again, it was like, even though it was a classic, the language was so easily comprehensible. Like it was so accessible. So once again, here's another classic recommendation. If you don't mind longer books to read a classic that doesn't feel like it's written like a classic. It was so interesting. It was so good. Highly recommend. I think everybody should read it. We gave it 5 pinkies up. I think we both did. I think we're 5 for 5, actually. 5 pinkies up for the last 3 books, both of us, that we read on That Pretentious Book Club, this other podcast. So,
cool. Yeah,
I recommend.
I started reading it in high school. Maybe I should give it another try because I got like, I think a third of the way through and I was like, I'm so bored. I'm putting it down. But it might have just been my mindset at the time.
I don't know. Maybe it's something that I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as like a middle schooler or a high schooler, but I also was strictly a YA fiction fantasy type person at those times. I branch out a little bit here and there now, but then I did not branch out at all whatsoever. So
I got a lot of pride in high school for having read things that like you would read later in high school or in college. Like I read The
Mhm.
Scarlet Letter when I was like a sophomore because I thought we would have to read it later, and then we never did. The first time we read it for a class was when I was in college. And I read Dracula, and I read I remember like a couple other things just to be like, hey, I've read these. Like I think I read The Lord of the Rings in like middle school because I was like, I want to be able to say that I've read Lord of the Rings.
I took pride in the exact opposite. I would go, people would talk about books that they read in school, and I would go, I never had to read that. And they would be like, what, how? And I'd be like, well, you see, because I ended up doing a bunch of different types of school. Like I was public, and then I was homeschool, and then I was online public charter, and then I was early college at a college or whatever. And so I did all the bunch of different ones. So basically I somehow just like coincidentally kind of skipped all of those big books you were supposed to read in school.
Nice.
And I was so proud of that for some reason. I was like, yeah, I'm very stupid. I don't know anything.
I haven't read anything important.
Yeah, it's like only YA fiction for me. I was very proud about it. But
cool.
Yeah, I'm glad I branched out a little bit, but I'm still very picky about classics. I mean, you knew me in college. I will never cease to bitch about some classics because they're annoying and hard to read. And I'm like, this is not written for me. I'm not the audience.
True. You're like what, 100, 200 years too young or old?
Yeah.
Young. Too young.
And it's weird because I am an old soul, but I above all don't like to have my time wasted. So I'm like, if I feel like anything is wasting my time, I'm like, no, this is not for me.
So like books written at a time when you were paid by the word and not for stories is just not your thing.
No, that's exactly the problem. There's even classics that are not written like that. I like most of the ones that are written like that. I'm like, I'd rather die. I'd rather die than read this all.
Please take this away from me.
Which I know is very dramatic, but my brain is like, absolutely not. This is the worst thing we've ever been asked to do. Which is ridiculous.
This is horrendous. How dare you?
My like emotional like reaction to it is so visceral. But anyways, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. That is my book rec.
Cool.
What about our word of the week?
Yes, our word of the week is blatherskite. 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 It was really fast. I bet exactly no one could spell it now. Anyway, it is a person who talks at great length without making much sense. Foolish talk or nonsense.
I'm a blatherskite. I'm a blatherskite.
I love that you own that. You're like, this is the best thing ever.
Pick this one for me. Yes. I have 2 podcasts for this exact reason. And I yesterday was like, I think I should start another one. Which I'm going to do when
call it blatherskite something.
Oh, blatherskite. That's such a good idea. I love it. That's actually a very good idea. It even works with my alliteration. Interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Blatherskite. Anyways, if you guys are ever looking for a way to describe me, blatherskite.
In one word.
In one word. Yeah. I know that you guys go home and you just go, I just really want to talk to somebody about Ash. She's just in my head. I can't get her out of my head. I just can't get like a right word for her is blatherskite.
There you go. Ta-da.
Yeah. You're welcome, everybody. They're like, please stop it. We are going to log off if you don't stop doing that.
Like, can you just talk about the topic already?
Yeah. And on that note, what is our theme for this episode?
Our theme is book piracy, which I said in a very excited way, but it's kind of a negative topic. Anyway.
Book piracy, everybody's favorite thing.
I do not think we are pro book piracy, so.
No, we are not. I am probably like a lot more neutral on it than some people are, but I am definitely against it. But it's that thing where it's kind of like when people like pirate movies and music, you're like, A, morally not good, B, not legal, so let's not just get into the practice of breaking laws because it's opportunistic and sets up a bad pattern of behavior. But practically, does it make that much of a difference? It doesn't ever really make that much of a dent in the industry. It's still wrong. You are still stealing, but it could be worse. It could do worse damage. So it's more like I definitely against it, but I want to put it in perspective, but I'm definitely against it because it's still stealing. So
I just feel like it's almost like lying. It's like, yes, it's wrong, but how many people have the authority to preach about that? You know, like everyone has lied. And I think if most of us over the age of 18 are being honest, and probably many people under the age of 18, you've pirated something and it's not great and you should stop. But don't come at it as though you are innocent and everyone else doing it is wrong.
It's one of those things where like, I feel like if you do it every now and then, like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm gonna sound really bad right now, but not that I do. I mean, I occasionally listen to audiobooks on YouTube, which I think might be similar, but I mean, it depends. A lot of those I listen to are like free to the public, like PBS type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's something, it's like definitely not something to get in the habit of wherever you stand on it. If you're like, it's not that big a deal, I can see your point. And I think a lot of us do, but just don't make a habit out of it.
Yeah. And I think too, so there are 3 kinds of types that I guess I'm thinking of when I say this. So you have, I think piracy technically is when you steal and then resell. Is that piracy or is that?
That's what I keep thinking, because I'm like, no, I think that you're correct. That's piracy.
Yeah.
Because when I think about like listening to an audiobook or finding a book for free and reading it, I keep thinking, well, like, and you're not selling it to someone else. Like, you can download music and put it on and burn it on a CD for yourself.
Right.
But you just can't sell it technically.
Exactly. So I think if that's what we're talking about, I think that's obviously wrong and you shouldn't do that because you don't have the right to profit off of someone else's work.
Fully agree.
Yeah. So I think that's like a black and white issue, but then we get into the other 2. And one is the idea that you just kind of illegally get something for free that's not supposed to be free, and then you have it for your own personal use, which is problematic, but not like the worst evil on planet Earth. Yeah. And Book Talk has been talking about this for a while. So if you guys are on Book Talk at all, like,
you
I don't know. Everyone is so extreme. Everyone is so extreme.
Yeah, because I was like, book piracy. What is that even? Because obviously, like Karissa said, the piracy where you take something or you get something for free that you should pay for, and then you make a profit off of it. Very obviously wrong across the board. Do not do that. What I said before does not apply to that, which is actual piracy. What people were talking about on Book Talk, which I was not a part of, so I didn't know this was going on, is this type of piracy where you're just like enjoying this stuff for free, which is probably still bad, but a little more of a gray area.
Yeah, because I mean, I get the sense that a lot of indie authors are particularly upset / affected by this because they sell fewer copies in general anyway. So if you pirate one, it does have a bigger effect than someone who's famous. But here's my thing about this. Just because someone is more or less affected does not change the principle of the action. So just because someone is wealthy versus poor versus middle class versus famous versus not famous, it doesn't make it okay. So even if an author is wealthy, it doesn't make book piracy okay. If they're poor, it's also just as equally not okay. So it does seem like a lot of indie authors were upset profit-wise. And there was this whole debate going on, and I'm going to come back to that. But then I just want to go real fast to the third thing, which is, I'm not sure if it's piracy, but I count it as piracy, which is that apparently people will buy books, read them all the way through, and then return them. And it's a thing, apparently. And it never occurred to me to do this, but that's how people get stuff for free sometimes.
That's so weird. That's such a hassle. Like, how big of a problem is that? Who is out there doing that with their time? That is such a hassle.
Go to the library.
Yeah, exactly. That's way more work than just going to the library.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
Anyway, so back to normal piracy that is not definitionally piracy, where like you get something illegally for your own use. Yes, book talk piracy. So everyone was making me mad because I feel like no one was being fair, which is why I wanted to talk about this. And it's kind of blown over a little, which is why I feel like I could talk about it now. All of the authors, or at least most of the authors, were like, this really negatively affects us and you shouldn't do it. And like, are they right? Probably. But I don't think they were giving proper acknowledgement to the fact that they probably pirate stuff too. Someone did point out that if you're on TikTok and you have a private account or a personal account and you're using sounds to market your books, you are pirating those sounds to make a profit off of them. So, that's a lot of people are doing that and they're getting upset at book piracy. I'm like, hypocrite, like you can't do that. And part of it is sometimes you don't know the legality of things. That never occurred to me. That's
what it is. I don't really know what the legality is either. Like if you find a copy of something for free, this is why I feel like book talk piracy is such a gray area in a couple different ways. I mean, morally, it's less of a gray area. Practically and legally, it's more of a gray area, because if you find some kind of content for free somewhere and you weren't the one who posted it there, right? The person who posted it is the one who did something illegal. I don't think that you're legally culpable for finding it. I mean,
Right.
it
But are
doesn't
you
make any
morally?
sense. But are you
Yeah.
morally? Then I say morally, yes. I think for book talk piracy, if we're talking practically, like if it actually affects the authors, it, like you said, completely depends. If it's an indie author, maybe. I still want to say probably not, because it's not probably not, like, unless it just takes off really big, that book, or it's a genre that tends to get pirated more. Like I would say that probably romance and more like I don't want to call it what I was thinking of for it, because that doesn't make it sound good. I was gonna say like cheap fiction. That's not at all what I mean.
Right.
Like the stories that are like maybe lower quality but high gratification, you know, or that people are used to reading really, really fast to get through. That kind of stuff, probably that happens more. So maybe for authors who are writing that type of stuff, or if they're hitting it off really big and they're an indie author, then maybe that's affecting you more so. But for big name authors, I don't really think that it's hurting you. It's like the music industry, like morally still wrong. Is it hurting people? Not really. So and is it illegal? Not unless you're selling it, I don't think. I mean, it's not good, probably, but I don't think it's illegal.
It's weird.
We're not lawyers.
Yeah,
so.
The legality is questionable. We don't know.
Legality is very questionable.
And so what was bugging me a lot is that and it's weird because I am pretty strictly on author and writer talk, so I don't actually see a lot of reader comments. I was just seeing authors responding to readers, so I don't know how fair they were being to them, but it seems like a lot of readers were saying things like, well, I'm poor, I can't afford to buy books. And I'm like, you don't have the right to someone else's work just because you're poor. Like, I don't want to be mean, but you don't have a right to something just because you want it and can't afford it.
That's also what libraries are for, because that's free.
Exactly.
And then some people were like,
right. And so some people are like, well, I don't have a library and da-da-da. And I'm like, first of all, I don't know how many counties in this country don't have libraries, but I think it's got to be few. I don't think it's that many.
In multiple small towns and they've all had a library.
Yeah. Do they have the exact book you want? Maybe not. But if you can't buy the book, you have to deal with that. Yeah. And then they were also
or wait until you can get a used copy. That's why I buy off thrift places, because I don't have a lot of money. I never have. So I wait. You do have to wait longer. This is the problem. If you get it from the library or you buy it used secondhand, like you typically have to wait longer.
You have to wait for it to go like a year or two where people are starting to resell their copies. Yeah,
that's a bummer, but it's just true.
And then a lot of indie authors particularly were saying like, well, email me and I'll give you a free copy in exchange for a review, right? Which seems totally fair. People do that all the time, but then they're like, I don't want to have to give a review. I'm like, gosh, are you willing to do anything for this? That's such a good deal.
That's a great deal.
Yeah. But I guess the thing that bothered me too is that readers were apparently saying that authors are biased and therefore can't have an opinion on it. I'm like, everyone is biased. You are absolutely allowed to have an opinion on something.
Yeah, even if you are biased.
Yeah. And even if you are biased because you're being affected by it, your opinion should matter more, not less.
Yeah. That's so silly.
Yeah. And so it was just, a bunch of readers being like, we have a right to stuff, and authors being like, no, you don't. And like, so many of them were right and yet so wrong, or wrong and yet also right in like the hypocrisy level and the consistency level, because so many people, I don't want to get political. Maybe we'll have to cut this. We'll see. But where, so many people, and I see it on Book Talk, on the internet, I know the specific people that do this will rage against capitalism and will be so upset about, having to pay for things, but yet then their products, people are trying to take it for free. Suddenly they're the ones that are being stolen from. And now it's a problem. It's like, if you're going to be okay with that when you're doing it to other people, you can't be upset when those people or different people do it to you. You can't.
That's very true.
Yeah. You can't like create an environment where you're like, yeah, take from the rich, take from people that have stuff you don't, and then get mad when people take from you.
Yeah. So this is a little bit where I think that this weird dilemma, you're right. This is the problem that we're having, like across, I don't care where you are at on the political spectrum. I do not care at all, but this is kind of like a problem that I can see across all of it. And it's for two reasons. One is that we have just totally forgotten that, love your neighbor as yourself. You guys who are thinking I'm being all Christian right now, no. This is a tenet in many religions across the world. Go look it up. This is considered, this treat your neighbor as yourself is basically, it's the put yourself in someone else's shoes. It is in every major religion across the world. It has that tenet, very common. I'm not being all Christian with you guys, but that's just because that seems also like common sense, right? It's not just a moral thing. That's just like yeah, I'll treat you like I want to be treated, and hopefully you'll want to treat me like that. And so part of it is that is what you're explaining too. And then the other problem is people like to rage against capitalism, and I totally get why they do it 100%, but it's because capitalism these days is really more, or what people think of as capitalism is not actually like what free market capitalism is supposed to be. This is weirdly a topic I know way too much about because I listen to way too many
I've done a lot of thinking about it.
Yeah. So you guys should go just check it out or look it up if you're like, what are they talking about? Are they idiots? Maybe. If we're idiots, you can totally call us out on this. But this is just something I've been studying because I'm interested, because I'm like, the concept of free market capitalism actually should benefit everybody. So capitalism as we see it now, or as people consider capitalism, is like, it's cronyism. It takes advantage of people. It's not fair at all. And so if that's what you're thinking, you're like, capitalism bad because of that, totally agree. If you think capitalism is bad because I have to pay people for stuff that they created with their efforts, that's free market capitalism, and that's good because that applies to you too. So if you create a product somebody wants, people have to pay you for it. They can't just take it from you with no legal recourse. So yeah, I don't think that that's really a political statement. I think that's just a tiny little economics lesson, and I think that our school systems have really failed us on economics, because I was like, I graduated from high school and even I think college really without even knowing what capitalism meant in like the pop culture sense, which is not even what free market capitalism is, which is free market capitalism was what capitalism was. So the people who are like, hooray, capitalism, they might not be evil. They might have a very different definition.
They might just understand the definition.
Yeah, because the definition has changed so much. So now you have to like clarify, no, I mean free market capitalism, which is it's just hilarious that we're getting to that point. But anyways, I think that I don't want to cut it because I don't think we're being political, because this applies to all parties. I do not care. It
feels so common sense.
It's a common sense thing. It's a basic economics lesson, and it's definitely relevant to the topic of should you not be allowed to take something that somebody else made that they're supposed to get paid for and not pay them for it.
Right. No. And you put that work in and
because you wouldn't because on the treat your neighbor as yourself or put yourself in someone else's shoes type thing, you would want to be paid if it was yours, right? Unless you donated it somewhere or made a free copy available somewhere. That's your choice. But that's your choice, exactly. And that's other authors' choices. So you can go find authors who are doing that. They're always out there. You might not get to read the exact thing that you want. If you want a compromise, and this is where I feel this is very much more of a gray area, and I really try not to do it, but I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say that I've never done it. I try to, when I get close to this line, it's a little harder because I have a podcast where I have to talk about a book every single week. And so I don't always have time to sit down and read the book. So very occasionally with an audiobook, I will like find a version on YouTube. I do think that mostly they are actual like made publicly available on purpose.
Public domain.
Yeah. I don't know for sure if they all have been. I honestly don't even know how to check for that. A, I try to do that, but B, just in case I have missed that a couple of times, and also by doing classic literature audiobooks, you're bound to find out way more. So I try not to do it for contemporary audiobooks. But first of all, you can use Chirp Books if you guys are like, I don't want an audio subscription. So that's what I typically use, because you could find like, especially with classics, there's the YouTube option where there's a lot of public domain stuff, and then there's also Chirp Books has like, you can find like a bunch of different versions of the audiobook, and like some will be like $20, some will be like $2. I've gotten so many $2 audiobooks. But what I always have done this is I buy the book. Like I actually buy the hard copy of the book first for any book that we're covering on the pod. So at least I can say I did purchase this. I did pay the author for it. I know the people who made the audiobook also need to get paid though. So I really try to use Chirp Books whenever possible. I will occasionally turn to YouTube for public domain stuff, and I can't say for certain that I've never listened to anything that wasn't public domain that shouldn't have been on there. I probably have at least once or twice. It's not good. I'm definitely going to keep trying not to do it. I get when you're in a hard place. Well, this is the thing where you don't make it a habit. I get it. I get the temptation because I've given in to the temptation, but it's still bad. And I still need to try to actively not do it. And I do try to actively not do it. So just like, it's not like a shame thing. Everyone's been there. This is a topic like absolutely everyone can relate to, whether it's books, movies, music, everyone's been tempted. It's because stuff is so easily available these days. So anyways, I mean, in a legal sense, technically I wouldn't be violating anything because I didn't put it up. However, in a moral sense, and I think that's what matters more, I still think it's bad. And I still feel like, I want the people who made the audiobooks to make money off of it. So try to avoid it at the very least. Like I try and balance the scales a little by always purchasing the book, but it still doesn't make it okay. So just do your best, everybody. I get it. I totally get the temptation, and I won't be a hypocrite and say I haven't given in. I probably will mess up again in the future, but it will never be a habit. I will promise you all that it will never be a habit, and I will do my very best, and I will always buy the book too. Yeah. Or I will get it from a library or something.
Right. And that seems like such a reasonable stance, right? Because so many of the authors that were talking about it, like if they had come with that kind of an attitude, I think I would have been able to take them more seriously. But so many of them were coming at it as though book piracy is like the worst crime you could commit. You are harming authors. You're doing terrible, terrible things. You're a terrible person. And I'm like, are you seriously sitting there saying that you've never pirated a movie or a TV show when it wasn't on Netflix or Hulu or whatever you have? You're telling me you've never copied a song from YouTube and put it on your phone or your iPod or anything like that? That's essentially piracy.
Exactly. And once again, we're talking about definition. Book talk piracy. Exactly. Because actual piracy, I would say many of us have never done actual piracy where it's actually
never resold,
profit off of, which is definitely practically, legally, and morally way, way worse than just looking at something for free for yourself. Still not morally great. But I mean, maybe not practically great, but not all it's so much worse to profit off. Do not do it. If I find out one of y'all's doing it, we're going to have words, young children. I'm just kidding. I won't talk.
We'll have a lecture.
We will have a lecture about it. But I would be heartbroken to hear that people are doing that. I would be so heartbroken to find that someone was doing that about my book. But like, I'm a sad little indie author, frankly, and I sell almost no books right now because I did publish because I'm currently working on getting traditionally published if you're new here, which is exciting. But I had a book that I wanted to publish that I know has very little chance of being traditionally published because it's just weird. Like the concept is just
too weird.
It's just kind of zany, which I think is fun. And I think it's a really fun read. It's Space Alien Southerners and Saving the World by Ashley O'Rourke. You guys can go check it out. It's on Amazon. I think it's just fun. It's a new adult, like sci-fi.
It's sci-fi, but not in the future.
Yeah, it's sci-fi, but think of it. It's like contemporary sci-fi. It's just weird and funny. I think it's funny, and you guys should just go check it out. But I've been thinking about it from this perspective, and like, if hundreds and hundreds of people were reading it for free, and I was losing like thousands of dollars or hundreds and hundreds of dollars, then I'd be a little bummed. If a few people here and there are reading it for free, I don't really care. I'm losing like $15. I make like $4 a book, I think, which is not. Guys, that's like a decent percentage too. So like, a couple books is not that big of a deal. So it's just like, as far as practical damage goes, totally depends on how many people and what the genre is and how big the author is and whether it's a traditional or self-published. And like, so that's, if you're just thinking practical damage wise, if you're like, the moral angle does not really concern me, well, then just practically assess it. I mean, everyone has their own reasons for doing things. And I mean, it's just an interesting topic, but definitely it's hard because I see where everyone is coming from. But like you said, for anyone to say, I've never pirated anything, book talk version of piracy, I've never read or obtained some kind of entertainment for free that shouldn't have been free, you are definitely lying. Well, maybe there's one of you little angels out there.
If you were like raised Amish, or if you have just like never done anything wrong ever, I question it. You know if you're lying or not. So, you know if you're guilty or not, but I would be hesitant to believe there are many people, particularly in their, 20s that have, we kind of grew up with the internet and that kind of stuff. You're telling me you never gave into temptation when you were 14 or 15 because you didn't realize it was illegal or because you didn't care or
you didn't think it was that big of a deal, or you were like, no, at least I'm not profiting off of it. Which is better than profiting off of it, which we've established is significantly worse. But most of us have done it. Most of us will do it again once or twice. Really, the idea is don't make it a habit. Like, because if this was something everybody was doing all the time, then it would actually be hurting people all the time. Some people might be hurting now. And if that's the case, then there are things that they can do and that they should be doing to definitely try and crack down on that. Not saying that it's the author's fault at all, but I do want people to know that if that is happening to you, I completely sympathize. That's horrible. Message me. We can chat about it. There's some things that you can do to try and shut that down. Because it's something my company is actually dealing with currently.
Oh, fun.
So it's not with the product, not with books. But it does happen. And there's some ways that you can try and, we can talk it out and stuff like that. But I totally sympathize. That's awful. But for most people, that is probably not a big problem. Like for people who are talking about on Book Talk, I get the sense it's like 1% is actually really losing big money, and that's horrible and shouldn't be happening. Any percentage, it shouldn't be happening too. But unless everybody was doing this all the time, and I don't think people are, because also frankly trying to like find like a free version of a book somewhere is a lot harder than trying to find like,
and you don't get to own the physical copy.
Yeah.
So like if you're a big book collector, that's not going to appeal to you anyway.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't seem like as big of an issue. So it seems like it can't, or it's not as big of an issue. It is as big of an issue. It's not as widespread of an issue. So it's not doing widespread damage. So to present it as if it's causing widespread damage is a little bit misleading, but maybe they're trying to scare people out of doing it also, or make people feel really guilty to not do it again. People already know to feel guilty. This is your reminder. We are all guilty. Let's work on that all together, including me, obviously.
And even if you don't feel guilty, that doesn't mean you're not doing anything wrong. So you should still logically think through it. Do they have a point? Am I just defending myself because I'm mad they're calling me out? Or, you know, are they wrong? Like you have to measure that not based on guilt necessarily emotionally, but in whether or not they have a point and an argument.
Well, and that's where you can do that thing where you're like, if it were me, how would I feel in this situation, and really think through it. And if you really feel like no, you'd be fine with that, write a book and make it free to everybody. Like go for it.
Consistency. I mean, if you're willing to take that hit.
I do not mind people disagreeing with me, even on morality, as long as you are consistent. So if you're like, no, I really don't think it's a problem, just be consistent about that in every other way then in your life too. And that's how you can know, like, okay, my own moral compass, at least I don't feel like I'm crossing my own moral compass. And people will, even if they don't agree with you, will have more respect. And this feels like a very like we're calling you guys out episode. Probably our listeners, this is not your problem because you guys are all writers. So you guys are probably
I would hope you would think about think of it from that angle.
Yeah, but we've probably all done it, and now we'll probably all worry about it a little bit because we're all the ones creating stories here. But it is an interesting topic.
I do definitely think, like, not to get onto a different topic, but people talk about tolerance a lot and how do you get along in a world with so many different people. I do really think the answer to that is consistency. If you just hold people to be consistent to their own worldview, not to yours, but to their own, and you criticize hypocrites, not necessarily people that disagree with you. I think that's where that line is.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Yep. But then also, also I want to talk about the returning books thing, because in a weird way, I'm going to have like a little story about this, but basically it never occurred to me to do this, where you buy a book, read it all the way through and then return it. Like that never even occurred to me, you know? And I realized I have done this once, and I'm not going to get defensive and try to explain it because you shouldn't do this. But when COVID happened, I got onto an Agatha Christie kick. I was reading a lot of Agatha Christie books, and the ebooks are so expensive. Not super expensive, but like for an ebook, they would be like $6-7, right? And I didn't want to have to wait for stuff to get mailed because everything was up in the air at that point. And I didn't know how long it would take. And I was being kind of impatient because it was so sudden. So I ordered one on the ebook on the Kindle, and it was such bad formatting. And I know that's not Agatha Christie's fault. It's the ebook version. But I was like, gosh, this is so bad. Can I return this? And so I went in and returned it. And I was like, can I do this again? So I bought like maybe 7 or 8 Agatha Christie books, read them all the way through. And if they had bad formatting, I returned them. Now, several things. One, Agatha Christie is dead. She does have an estate, but the people being affected by that are not her. That doesn't make it right, but that is a thing to consider. 2, I did buy most of them in hardback copy, like paperback copy, once I could, because I wanted them, because I enjoyed them. And so I returned the ebook, but then I bought like the version of it that I wanted. It felt kind of like returning a paperback to get a hardcover version. Just like
to me that doesn't sound wrong, because you still bought the book and so the estate still made money and it was still a book. Like it was like an audiobook or something, and completely different people produced it. And like audiobooks have like producers and editors and actors and stuff. Like that's why I feel differently about that. But for like just buying a different version of the book when you didn't like the formatting, that feels really reasonable. You return products that you don't like. So.
Yeah, I would think so.
I feel like that's fine.
So, and then my third reason is that the reason I returned them was not because I wanted
reading them.
Well, it wasn't that I wanted them for free. It was that I legitimately felt like no effort had been put into them. I felt like the formatting was so terrible. I'm like, I don't want this. It's kind of like getting a book and finding that half the chapters are missing. Even if I read through all those chapters, I think I still have the right to return it because it's not what I bought. So just to clarify, the issue is buying the book, reading it all the way through, and then returning it either because you wanted it for free or because you didn't like it. Now, if you don't like a story, that's on you. Like, authors are not guaranteeing that you're going to like their story. They hope that. That's why they're doing it. But you aren't guaranteed the right to enjoy the story. If you read it all the way through, it's kind of like if you go to McDonald's and you eat the whole hamburger and then you want your money back, like you must not have minded it that much. You ate the whole thing. So if you read the whole thing, even if you don't like it at 1-2 stars, you still consumed a product. You still have to pay for it. But I think there is a difference in finding that the product is bad. If you go to McDonald's, you order a hamburger and then it makes you sick, I think that's different. If it's not what it was promising to be. And so I don't know. I read a lot of 1-star reviews on Goodreads as a guilty pleasure. I enjoy this. And some of the people that were talking about this, I looked up their books because there's a lot of indie authors. I can't read that many books, so I haven't read them, but I was looking at their reviews. And I wonder sometimes if this is an issue. I haven't really heard of this being an issue, but if it's an issue, is it because people aren't enjoying it, or is it because they feel like it's bad quality that they didn't deserve their money? I think it could be both. I think there are selfish people out there that would return books to try to get them for free. I think it's also possible they're returning it for legitimate reasons, like it's really bad, or it's not formatted well, or it's missing chapters or something like that. And so I think that's a big difference.
Mix. Yeah.
I think
it's probably like a half and half mix.
I know.
It's kind of a hassle to return stuff.
Exactly. I know. I would just be like, I'll take the $10 hit,
whatever. Exactly. Unless it's, it's an ebook, it's easier to turn in. But like about like your ebook story, like if I purchased a print book and the formatting was wrong, I would return it for a correct copy. I would return it for one without the formatting messed up. Right. So that's valid because you're returning a product that wasn't executed correctly to the degree that that it was advertised to have been, conducted in or whatever. So that's different. But like if you just read it, you didn't like it and you return it because you didn't like it, different, because that's a risk that you run with anything. That's the risk you run going to a movie theater, but you don't like get your $8 back or whatever.
Exactly. So. Going out to eat or buying clothes or anything else you do, like anything every day, you're not guaranteed to like it. There is a certain like safety standard, like food can't give you food poisoning, and clothes can't fall apart on their first wear and that kind of stuff, like quality issues. But generally speaking, if you buy it, it doesn't matter if you decide. I mean, you can return certain things. You can return a dress if you don't like it when you get home, but you can't return it 6 months later because you wore it out a few times and now you decide you want your money back.
Yeah, I think you're not supposed to return clothes if you've worn them. Right. Unless maybe they fell apart and then maybe you could return them. They might make an exception, but typically I think because if you've taken the tag off and worn it, you can't.
It's supposed to have the tag. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Unless you are intentionally not taking the tag off and then trying to return it as if you didn't wear it, which is also wrong. So, yeah.
So then this is what happened, Ash, because you weren't on Book Talks. You didn't hear about this probably.
No,
So authors started talking about this. Like, this is, again, they were like, this is the most terrible thing I've ever heard of. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like murder's worse, but okay. And so they're talking about this. And apparently, part of me doubts this, but apparently so many readers got so mad at this that there were mass returns across like the industry, that a bunch of readers are just like, fine, you don't like this, I'm going to return my copy. And it was only certain authors that were like, I lost all my sales. And the thing that authors were saying about this is that when you return a book, and I don't know if this is indie, if this is like Amazon versus Barnes and Noble, if it's everyone, I don't know, the author has to pay not just their profit back, but like the cost of the book. So they're losing money when you return stuff.
Wow.
So if that happens, like that is a big deal, especially if it's happening to a lot of copies and they're not making money off of other copies, which is bad. And you should not do that, especially like if authors are saying, hey, we know you don't know this. It's not a thing I knew, but now that you know, please don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know. that's not the way they said it. They said it so nasty that then readers responded this way. And in my head, I was like, readers, you are so wrong. This is a terrible thing to do. But also I kind of admire the audacity to like seriously go for that.
That's hilarious.
Like to just collectively decide to like screw over all of the authors that were saying this. It's not right because the authors were right, even if they were saying it in a mean, unfair way. But it's wrong. But like, I also was kind of laughing at it. So apparently, and this is also really bad, and I found it really funny, and I probably shouldn't. It was kind of like your demon possession story. There was apparently, and I'm not going to get into the Ukraine thing, but there was like a short story collection that was sold as a charity, like a fundraiser thing for Ukraine.
Oh,
right?
No.
And everyone returned their copies. Not everyone, but many people returned their copies.
That's
and
awful.
one of the authors was like ranting about it. And she opened with, I'm about to go on a rant. And usually when people say this on Book Talk, they mean they're about to say something funny. So I was in like a laughing ready mood. And then she started to like actually go off about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, why am I finding this so funny? I should not find this funny. You should not do that. You shouldn't return things for fundraisers, because in that situation, you shouldn't have bought the book because you wanted the book necessarily. I mean, it should still be good quality, but you bought it for the fundraiser. Always pay more for fundraisers than what it's worth. That's just something you take into account. And so part of me was like, one, was this advertised as a fundraiser? Because I do think it's possible that people didn't know that, and so they didn't realize they were returning a fundraiser book.
Yeah, I hope.
And then
most
also,
of us would
was it terrible?
Stop and think about that.
I know, right? Was it terrible quality? Because it came out like 2 weeks after the Ukraine thing happened, and I'm like, are these all stories written since then? Because I don't know how high quality stories, how many authors can write in 2 weeks. That seems very fast. So I'm like, maybe there was a quality issue. And if that combined with not knowing it was a fundraiser, that makes sense that people would return it. And it just coincidentally fell in the timeline of this discussion happening on Book Talk. I don't know, but it was just, everything was going on. And I'm like, gosh, everyone is wrong. I'm not on anyone's side. So
literally any issue, it has to be taken with context. Every single type of piracy that we've discussed today, you need to consider it in perspective with context. The idea of capitalism versus free market capitalism, you need to understand with context or you're not understanding it. And how you feel about it is completely up to you. It is your own mind, your own thoughts are perfectly valid. You can make up your own mind. But if you don't think contextually about situations, you're missing so much. And you could very well take a really hard stance on something that maybe that's not the stance you would have taken if you had understood the context. Like this story is completely, I could not take a side without knowing the context, because it's either horrible or just like the worst coincidence ever. And without knowing the context,
both seem so likely.
I know. So like, I'm like, oh my God, unless somebody explains that, I just am shocked and horrified, but I don't know if I'm horrified at anyone in particular. Oh, that is rough.
And yeah, it was a lot. And so I think also so because readers reacted this way, I started thinking about it. I was like, why is everyone so bitter about this? So then I started thinking, I think it had to do with the initial response. I don't think that authors, and this is something you need to take into account, social media, it's something we've taken into account when you're like doing a podcast or anything in the public eye. I don't think authors were clear up front about what they meant. I think a lot of people watching their videos would assume they were talking about book returns, period, which means you buy the wrong book. Maybe you bought book 2, you needed book 1, so you return it. Or you buy the hardcover and instead you wanted the paperback, anything like that. Or you read a chapter and you're like, ugh, this isn't for me. I'm going to return it and buy something new. I think a lot of readers thought that's what authors were talking about. And it wasn't. They were clear about this later. But at that point, I think readers had already formed their opinions about how authors like were being cruel or unfair, and they stopped listening. And so then you get authors that think they're being really fair and really clear, and they're not. And then readers that are like, well, screw you, and then doing things that are not fair in response. And it was like a guilty pleasure thing to watch. It was like, this is terrible. It was like watching a train wreck.
Drama.
And
oh my God.
So many indie authors were like, I'm losing profit. I'm like, that sucks. But also I feel like you brought it on yourself, but not you specifically. It was just like the community in general. It was crazy. So, I mean, I don't know. And then there were a bunch of people, and people are still doing this, that make videos and they're like, I just want you to know that I'm against book piracy. And I'm like, how brave of you to add a voice to a chorus with nothing new to say.
That's hilarious. That is super funny.
I hate when people do that. Don't add your voice to something unless you have something new to say about it, right?
Yeah.
Like you just saying like, I am very important and you need to know what I think about this. I think the same thing everyone else thinks about it. Like, it's so annoying.
I agree. That bugs me too.
But,
I'm like, thank you for wasting my time.
Yeah. So I just like this episode, you could say it's just me repeating it all, but A, reaching a different audience than book talk, probably. And B, I feel like I had a super pessimistic take on it that was a little different. Everyone is wrong. That's my take. Don't pirate. Don't return books you've read, but also authors need to chill a little bit. So
yeah, I think so. Well, here I was gonna, because we're all writers and authors probably here on this podcast. Here is what I'm thinking for advice for all of us. And every time, by the way, every time in this episode we've said like you need to not do that. People need to not do that. We're also including ourselves in that group of people, just so we're not all like high and mighty up here. This is the same standard we're applying to everyone, but specifically for us writers and authors. Yeah. Don't be a hypocrite is the main idea here. But if you are finding something like this is happening to you, first of all, I think we would both love to hear about it because it could be something interesting to talk about on the pod more, just to talk to you guys more about and like learn more. Like if you guys have more context for us, we would love that. But also, I was going to get into the writer's group thing. I'll get into that in a second. Oh God, my train of thought just like fled my mind. Oh yeah, I was going to say, if you ever have something that you want to talk to readers in general about, like, you know, because a lot of us have social media presences now, especially on TikTok, because you kind of have to be in the game, and I hate it and I'm not good at it, but you have to. If you are one of these authors struggling with this or a different issue and you want to rant about it, just consider the you'll catch more flies with honey thing. Like your readers, even the ones who might be doing something illegal or not morally correct, are probably not trying to hurt you. And that doesn't make it right at all. But if you come at them as if they are trying to do something bad, it's likely to spur more of a defensive reaction than an understanding one. So that's where also maybe wait until maybe write down what you're thinking when you're mad, and then wait till you're not mad to make your video or to make your statement. Because if you can present the information logically, then people will be a lot more open to it. If you react with emotion, even if your emotions are totally valid, and they probably are, I mean, your feelings about anything are valid. But if you just react with those to people, there's a good chance you're going to incite a different emotional reaction. And we're not looking for an emotional reaction here. Like we shouldn't be looking for an emotional reaction in readers or the public when we're, you know, posting on social media about issues or our books or whatever. I mean, maybe about book stuff if you're trying to, you know, get interest, but not about like issues. You want people to think with their mind. So try to maybe bring a little bit less emotion to your video, or make a different video about it later down the road. But like try to lead with cool, calm, collected thoughts, so people can have their own cool, calm, collected thoughts about it versus just reacting in defense.
And don't like name call and assume people are coming from terrible motives. Like I know if you're really passionate about an issue, I get it. We all have those things. It's really hard to view people who disagree with you as well-intentioned, but they usually are. And so like when it comes to this issue, I think a lot of readers didn't know or didn't realize the harm it was doing. And so, you know, over the course of the, 2-3 weeks this was going on, I was listening to authors, and progressively they just got to a point where they were explaining it better. Maybe the emotion had died down, maybe just more things had occurred to them. Different people were coming into the conversation finally. And by the time they got to the end, I was like, wow, there are a lot of really logical reasons to not do these things, that these things are wrong. I wish we'd started there, but I don't know that readers got to that point, because I think authors alienated them right off the bat. And like, if you're an author, the one group of people in the world you don't want to alienate are readers.
Yes. Because first of all, they're your audience. And second of all, they're powerful. They have been reading about world dominion and taking over the world since they were wee young children. It's not a group to piss off. And we're also all readers. So like, think about like, if this was your favorite author and they were putting out a message to you, like you might feel called out if they were ranting about something, even if you didn't do that thing. Like, it's just not a good look. Like, we probably wouldn't want to see it on our favorite authors. So maybe like we should just try to avoid that, and just like with anything. Also, because this is relevant to the piracy issue specifically, but also like any other issue, because a lot of like people who are in entertainment, be it books, movies, music, feel like they have either a new take or a responsibility to present their take. I kind of disagree with that, but it's totally, you know, person to person. But everybody can present their own new take, which I think is great. And people often feel a responsibility to do that in our industry. So whenever we're coming to something like that, I think it's a very good idea to, like Karissa said, you know, wait till you're not angry, because you'll probably make more sense a little later down the road, even if it's just like a couple days or even a couple hours later. And that is when you're going to be you're going to have the most potential for people to understand you. That's where you're going to have the most potential to make a change. So be it about book piracy for your book or someone else's book or the topic in general, or some other issue you want to make a statement about, make your statement. You absolutely should. We're all communicators. That's why we're here. If you have a take you want to share, go for it. But maybe wait till you're not mad, but just for maximum effectiveness.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to say in this episode where we might have pissed off a couple people or a lot of people?
I feel like we've been so logical and like inarguably correct, but I'm sure someone out there will disagree.
You're so absolute. I'm like, I don't know about inarguably correct, but I do feel like we've been fairly clear. If you guys want to chat more about this with us, book piracy, writing, you want to disagree with us, that's perfectly fine. I have no problem with that at all. We are definitely not always right and cannot prove that we are right, but we do like to learn. And if you have more context, we would love to hear it, and be it this or something else. And also, if you guys want to talk about writing stuff, because this is writers everywhere, you can join our writers group. It is free to join. That is something that is totally free to join. You don't have to feel bad about that at all. You get our podcast for free. You don't feel bad about that at all. You can totally share it with everyone. They're like, I'm never sharing this episode with anybody.
You made everyone look bad. That's why it's fair.
Yeah, we made all of us. I made me look bad. Chris made herself look bad. We made authors look bad. We made readers look bad. Yeah, we pretty much made everyone
join us in this pit of despair.
Yeah, but at least I feel like we were honest. I can feel good about that at least.
Exactly.
Anyways, if you guys want to chat writing, you can join our writers group for free on Patreon by going and searching for our production company, which is Story Sirens Studio. So go check out Story Sirens Studio on Patreon. You can join the writers group. We can chat there. If you guys want to message us, we are also on social media. We're on Instagram, where Karissa posts fun little tidbits from each episode, just to keep up, catch up if you didn't have time to catch the episode, or you didn't take notes and you wanted to. Do people take notes on this? I do, but I'm probably just a nerd about this. And then you can also follow us on TikTok, because surprise, surprise, if you couldn't tell via this episode, we are on TikTok. Mostly Karissa is on TikTok. We are the
I mostly
society.
Like, I'm like a voyeur, right? Like I make funny videos, but I don't get involved in conversations. I just watch. And I'm like, I'm going to think about this for 10 weeks and then I'm going to make an episode about it.
That's so good. Yeah, anyway. I pretty much just watch, and I don't comment, and I don't necessarily like, except for very occasionally, because I'm still always compiling what I think, and I'm open to having my mind changed. So if you guys think that you can or should change my mind, you're welcome to give it a shot. I will require evidence, and I recommend that you guys require evidence or some kind of logic to back up things you change your mind to believe.
Yes, that's like, if someone is talking about a controversial issue, I will almost always like it if I feel like they're being logical and clear in what they're saying, even if I disagree. And even if I agree with them and I feel like they're being unfair, I won't. I try to keep that consistent.
No, I try to do that as well. If someone's like, I'm like, I agree with you, but I can't handle the way you're presenting this. I'm like, I hate this. I have to skip your video. I can't do it. Anyways, you guys can follow us. We're the Scripturarian Society. You can also email us at contact@storysirensstudio.com if you want to, or if you have ideas for the podcast for like specific episodes, or if there's something that you would specifically like to see us do on Patreon or on social media. We can do bonus episodes, we can do Q&As, we can do whatever you guys want to do. So just let us know what you guys want to see, and we are happy to listen, happy to take critique and advice and all that good stuff, because writers love being criticized. It's not true, but we should be much better about it. We do start to get some thick skin. We should all be way better about taking criticism. But
I think part of me, just real fast, has kind of become almost numb to it. Like people in my life will criticize small things, just like say something about like my hair or my shirt, not in a mean way, but just like, oh, interesting hairdo. And I'm like, I literally don't care what anyone thinks. I've been rejected so many times by agents.
Yeah, it's true.
You have no idea what would 100%. Hurt me.
Yeah, I used to get rejected for auditions when I was acting, and of course, hundreds and hundreds of agents. So you do kind of build up a little bit of a tolerance, but also there's this idea, and this can apply to us too. Basically, I saw this thing that said, like, don't worry, like, don't let somebody's critique bother you. Basically, like, okay, how was it put? It was basically like unless you have like a close relationship with them kind of thing. Like, don't take critique from somebody who doesn't know you at least somewhat intimately, or doesn't understand you at least somewhat intimately,
or doesn't care about your like betterment or improvement, is just being critical for the sake of it.
Maybe that's the better ruler, is unless they understand you / have some logic, and also they care about you, don't worry about it. So if you guys feel like you don't need to listen to us because we don't take those boxes, that is perfectly fine. I hope you know we do care about you guys. That's why we're doing it. That's why we've got the writers group that no one's all that interested in, but we do care about you guys. We care about authors and storytellers and readers probably way more than other groups of people, because those are our people. So we do care, but not that this is criticism of anyone. This is really more, this is like another PSA episode, honestly. So anyways, a
little bit.
We care about you guys, but use discernment when you are deciding whether or not you're going to care about someone's criticism. You might not need to.
Definitely.
Which is like a whole other episode, but it's true.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. Anyways, how has writing been going for you this week?
0 words. So it's been going.
0
I
words.
really thought, I thought like when the puppies were asleep, I could write. The only problem is that if they wake up, I have to be on that, right? I have to like let them outside or get them food or whatever.
Yeah.
Play with them so they don't whine and stuff, especially at night when I don't want them to wake up the other people in the house.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for me to break concentration from writing and then come back to it. It's like, I don't even know. I hate that. I'd rather get nowhere than like come forward like that and be jolted out of it.
Yeah.
And so I tried a little bit, but it's just too hard. I can't do that. So I kind of am in this place where I'm like, I'm thinking about it, the whip is in my head. But I'm not, it's kind of like it's a forcible rest. Like I didn't choose to, but that's what's happening. So yeah. Nice. What about you? Have you finally started writing?
I have not. I've thought about it a bunch. Instead, I started painting the house, but also because I have been in a really weird headspace. Not to get too personal, but like, guys, I need to go to the doctor. My head is like, I just need to just go figure out if I can mellow out my mood somehow. If you guys want to hear the whole spiel, you can go check out, I don't know, one of our episodes on That Pretentious Book Club. I don't remember which one, but hormones are fun and they make me not have any fun at all almost any of the time anymore. So between that and painting, no, I haven't, but I was like, I have to get my hands on some kind of writing. I have to get my brain started doing this again. And I was actually very pleased with the results, because I put pen to paper and I was thinking beforehand, I was writing because I was like, oh my God, it's been so long. It's going to be so hard. I'm just going to have immediate writer's block. I literally put my pen on the page and I was writing like full sentences of the story before I even realized I was doing it. So my brain just went into creation mode, which I just love making things. So anyways, this is great. If you guys are having writer's block or it's just anxiety about writing, which is apparently something I do now, which is awful. And I hate it. It never used to be
so much fun.
Somebody gave me this. I don't remember. It might've been you or maybe my mom got me this book called Complete the Story. And it's got a bunch of story prompts in it. So it's probably my mom. So it's printed by Piccadilly Incorporated. And I looked, there's no author. I guess this publisher just produced this. It's from Piccadilly, USA. But it's great. It's got like a ton of different like little like writing prompts that you can fill out. And they're just one page. Cool. So there's no pressure. You could do a story in 5 minutes, which is what I did. But you still feel like you've gotten to like kind of exercise. It's like lifting the tiny weights, before you can lift the big weights.
You're doing something.
Yeah, I'm doing something. And it gave me like a lot of courage to be like, oh my God, I'm not horrible. And when I started it, I didn't even know where I was going with it. And then at the end, I had created this like story of like this girl who accidentally witnesses a serial killer disposing of a body. And that's like the beginning of the story. I know. I thought you're like,
that's my jam.
And see, that's not even my genre. So I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I like it. So that's my writing.
I'm gonna go with it.
It's not related to my whip or any of my, because then I've got my 2 other baby whips, like my alternate ones, that I also, those are the ones I really want to start. So I feel like I have options and I haven't yet. Maybe I'll do that this Saturday. Remind me if you think about it. But like, also the problem is, this is going to sound like another excuse, but this is genuinely true, you guys. Ever since we found this house online, I have not had a free weekend. I have not had, my free time has not ever been actual free time, because there's been paperwork to do or the house to go see or repairmen to call or quotes to get. And now since we've been in the house, I have not had a single weekend that I have not had to leave the house. like go somewhere for
Right.
like the whole day, at least one or
Yeah.
two of the days on the weekend between like Friday and Sunday. So literally, and this weekend we go to a wedding on Friday, and then on Sunday we have to drive all the way down to San Antonio, which is about a 2.5 hour drive from here. And then the next weekend I'm going to go see a friend who I haven't seen in about a year, because we've been trying for months to, you know, arrange a meetup. And when all your friends are adults these days, no one has time for anything.
It's tough.
So we have to drive all the way into Austin. So that's going to be like a whole, at least half of a day. And then on that Sunday is Mother's Day. So I'm taking my mom out. And then the next week is my mom's birthday. So literally and then I have a business trip just floating around somewhere in like May or June, and it hasn't been pinned down yet. So that might be the next weekend or not. Right. So I don't actually know if I have a free weekend after that or not. So basically, it's not really an excuse, but it really feels like an excuse that I have had like no free time at all. I mean, people are like, you can make time. And I guess I could, but I will say in the last 3 weeks, I haven't. Don't you do it, Yennefer. Yennefer's about to jump down onto my computer again. Stop doing this when I'm recording. She did this during that pretentious book club too. She's the worst. Knock it off. She's licking her lips. You wait, young lady. She just glared at me and retreated back. On like the little thing.
It's very book Yennefer of her.
It is very book Yennefer of her. Anyways, what was I saying?
No free weekend.
I'm an insane person. Oh, I was saying, I will say that since I've been here, people are like, you don't make time. You could like, instead of watching TV before bed. I still defend that though. I still say if you need to watch TV to chill out some, go for it. There is a thing to discipline, but discipline has not really ever been my problem. It's been a lack of time. And now I haven't actually even watched TV. Like, unless I've been doing the dishes and it's on my phone and I'm doing a chore, I have not sat down and watched TV.
Well, and the thing about
like
TV, and writing and all of that, it's hard to do that in 5 or 10 minute stints. So like, sure, I have time technically in the day, but is it enough time, you know, in a row to get anything done?
That's what I'm saying. So that's why I haven't really had like a big gap of a few hours to write in months. I have definitely, now I'm to the point where I don't even have like little time spans where I can watch TV. So I definitely don't have time spans that I can write. Well, which is why I pulled out my Complete the Story, because there's always a way to get to your writing. So I pulled this out and I hadn't written it in years. And I do just one of the little stories, and I'm trying to do like one a day. Cool. That's it. I'm hoping that will maybe inspire me to take something off my priority list and put writing up there instead. But it's kind of hard because everything on my priority list is actually fairly high priority. So there's not a ton of wiggle room for moving stuff around. Yeah. But that's my writing update. It's just kind of pitiful, but it's exciting for me. I didn't know cool, I could write about serial killers, but apparently I can.
Branch out, Ash.
Yeah. Hooray. Good for me. Yeah. I guess that's everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I already gave you guys the whole spiel on, you can follow us on social media, the Scriptorian Society. If you want to check out our merch, you want to support the pod that way, you guys can hear my dog Brownie barking. You can check out storysirenstudio.com. That is our website because it's our production company. You can also check out That Pretentious Book Club, which is our sister podcast. It is a comedy podcast about books. Go check it out. You can meet Kendall and Karissa's in a lot of those episodes too, actually. So if you're just like, I need more full length Ash and Karissa, but you want to hear us being funny instead of being like, people are dumb, then go check it out.
We can do both.
Yeah, we can do both. I mean, really that podcast is largely us going like, oh my God, aren't we so stupid together? Yeah, we're such idiots. And that's largely what that podcast is. Anyways, go check it out. Go check out the website, get some merch for the summer. We've got tank tops now. And until then, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.